we on a sister ship. Come with us, we on a sister ship. Yeah, we on a sister ship. Roll with us, we on a sister ship.
Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it.
We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya. Substance, ho! Sis, you know we on a mission, no games. Help each other get over some things. Build strength, bring change. Cause we've been through the rain. Now it's time to shine like blaze. Let's talk about life skills. We building up our quality, the right wills. We rolling out of poverty. Love heals. So we become the prodigy of how a system commodity stands. Together we united, hold hands. Support each other's dreams and our plans. Doing everything we can.
Come on, just to show we understand the power of a friendship. Fam, live life on purpose.
Together we learn it. Yeah, let's talk.
We don't want to see you hurt and be here for each other. No matter the color, networking. That's for sure and for certain. Oh yeah, we on a sister ship. Come with us, we on a sister ship. Yeah, we on a sister ship. Roll with us, we on a sister ship. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I roll with ya. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I roll with ya. We got a brother over here, brother. We got this now, come on, let's talk about it. Sister ship, we got this now, come on, let's talk about it. Sister ship, we got this now, come on, let's talk about it. Sister ship, we got this now, come on, let's talk about it. We on a sister ship. We on a sister ship.
I didn't know we were coming to party this
All right. Yes,
start.
Happy blessed Sunday, everybody. Happy blessed Sunday. This is your Sistahship Network right here in Genesis Radio Studio. We have such an amazing topic today because we're back in school, right? School's done started, in some states just starting, some states already started. And it's such an important discussion that we want to have around education and pretty much our current state of affairs. So much has changed in the last year and a half. And we want to just really be educated on the subject because there's so many people that really don't know what transpired over the course of the last year and a half, how things have changed, how things have evolved, what happened, how do we manage through it. So this is something we definitely want to make sure we talk about. With that said, I need to obviously introduce our amazing panel here because without them, we wouldn't have education where it's at today. So let's talk about, we got Trenae Lurie, Diversity Coach for East Stroudsburg School District, Dean of Students of Lehman Intermediate School. Welcome, Trenae.
Thank you.
Trenae, we can't wait to have this discussion because we were having some pre-discussions because we start getting to talking and forget we have a show coming up. So, and then we're going to have Rhonda Footman, teacher with Commonwealth Charter Academy, adjunct for Northampton Community College and Penn State University. Some of my friends alma mater. And also the founder of Tree of Life Education Center online tutoring service, which, hello. Let's talk about online students. Okay. With that said, also John Gerkhart, did I say that correctly? Yes. He is the committee man for the District 6 Stroud Township. We are so blessed to have you on board as well today. Thank you so much for coming in. Welcome, John. And I am your girl, Stephia of the Sistahship Network, Queen of Bling, and we've got Tiffany.
And I am your girl, Bling.
And of course, Genesis Radio, Terry, right there helping us out on the making sure that we got everything working technically. But with that said, we want to kind of, again, getting into the discussion, I think the biggest thing is really to understand where we are today is to understand how it all started. And we know everybody's talking about it, COVID, right? I mean, it's the elephant in the room sometimes. But we have to understand like what changed because it was immediate.
It was.
It was immediate. Like
I went to
came
work and they
in
said, don't come tomorrow.
exactly.
That was it.
Shut down.
Yeah.
Yep.
March of 2000.
March
what,
13th, 2020 was a Friday.
Yeah,
Friday
so
the
the whole
13th.
day.
And
You
I
know
was
the
not at work
whole
that
day.
day.
Oh, you
I
were?
had a sick child,
Oh.
but I received information said, "Girl, we not coming back to school."
See?
Wow.
Take your computer.
Well, you know what? I was subbing at the South High School that day, and they didn't even make the announcement till like 30 minutes before the buses were coming. So we really didn't even know.
You didn't even have
Wow.
time
Right,
to get anything
right.
prepared.
Because I think the
Wow.
governor's address was late in the afternoon.
Yeah.
It was like after
Right.
2:00.
Wow.
So school ends for us 2:30.
2:30, yep.
So there was really not much time. But like I said, I wasn't even there, and just didn't go back to work.
It's interesting because with my job that my husband was traveling out of the country,
Ooh.
coming back
Wow.
right when we got the word. And I was working from home that day because I'm able to do remote working. And then our company said, don't come back into the office. We'll figure out when we're coming back. So I'm like, all right, we left all our personal belongings.
Right.
It literally was like the world just stopped. Right?
there.
It did.
So with that said, kind of help us understand how, like the emotions around, because when you're talking an abrupt change like that, it's got to do something to children, to the teachers, the educators, the staff, everybody involved in the educational system. So how did you guys cope with that or manage? What was your first thought at that point in time?
Honestly, because at that time I was not a contracted teacher. My first thought was, how am I paying my bills next month? That was really my first thought. But it ended up working out for me because I still live in the home that I raised my 6 children in. So I had space. So people were like, Mom, what are we going to do? Can you help? Can you keep our kids while we work from home? So I had a daughter and grandkids come and son-in-laws. But I think it was so traumatic that the teachers really couldn't guide the students. Like the teachers didn't know what to say, what to do, how it was going to look.
Right.
So that kind of put them at a loss for even how to guide the kids at that point.
We had 2 weeks to kind of get it together. Like there was 2 weeks of really nothing. So there was, some correspondence as far like you just have to get yourself together. I think we did a really good job with what we were given and did the best that we could. And I think that students were receptive to that. I believe that teachers did their best. And I think that everyone just honestly just pulled together just to get it done, to get to June. And then figure out what it was going to look like, And I think that's the best way to describe it, that I think we really did a great job. For the ones that were able to get on, for the ones that were able to, their people were present. You can't account for those that didn't show up. We did our best in terms of how to make accommodations to get students through. And I think those went on individual basis as much as possible. Like, okay, this situation, we had kids that lost parents. Like there were things that happened, that extenuating circumstances that we all I think everyone just did the best that they could.
Yeah, and I have to commend all educators, the staff. It was a huge undertaking, I think, for everyone, right, including the parents. But had it not been for everyone pulling together and trying to figure out how do we get, like all that's happening, I have to figure out how to just get through it, right? Because you had 3 months left of school, and we have to get these students through.
But one thing that that occurs to me when I look back on it, and I think across the country, we missed a really good opportunity to give a message to our students, because everybody was all concerned about, well, how do we make this feel normal?
Right.
It wasn't normal.
Right.
And I think we would have served our students better if we said, look, I don't know what I'm doing. Let's learn together. We have to pivot. We need to teach our kids how to pivot, and we don't, because life is going to be throwing stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I think that if we had kind of taken that word normal out of what we were doing and just said, I don't know, I don't know, you don't know, let's come together and figure this out. I think that would have been like more of a life lesson.
Then it was new normal.
It was
Right.
It's not new normal. It's just new.
Different. It's different.
Right. It's just new. We don't know, and we try to figure it out.
Yeah.
I agree with that, Rhonda. Definitely.
It was definitely different. I remember, friends of mine, running to the school, grabbing,
It almost
computers,
felt apocalyptic, right?
Yeah.
What do I need?
Exactly. That's exactly it. It was apocalyptic. Perfect. Right there. But, I guess from a feeling standpoint, because, you're not only educators are in this system, but you have children.
Yes.
As parents, how did you manage this? And Tiffany, I know you have children as well that had to go through that. I can't speak for me. I have no children in school. I have 11 nieces and nephews. So I know what my sisters were texting, calling, Facebooking, everything. How did you manage that with your children?
Well, I'll step out of this part. My kids were grown. They were done by then. My baby was 19.
My kids did really well. They really, I'm there, I had to teach during the day. So I was required to teach, and we just had to work it out. You have class, get up, do what you need to do. You have class, get up, do what you need to do. And I would use my time in the afternoon to work with my little one as much as possible, So I would tell people this, because I had people who were struggling, colleagues of mine. I said, let me tell you what I did. I said, I would let my son stay up very, very late at night. So I know he would sleep through the morning when I had to teach.
There you go.
And then I would get him up, later on when I had some more flexibility in time, because I followed the same schedule. And then we would do what we had to do. There was only one day a week that he had to be up by, by 10 to be in class, and I would work around that. But that's what I needed to do for me. And for my family and for how we needed to function. So it's like you have to do what you need to do for your own family. You can't look at what other people do and say, I need to do it this way. And that's why I told you, I said, you have to function in what works for you. You can't look at other people and try to follow somebody else's lead for something that's not your story. Like, this is what works for me. I have to do this. Somebody else might have to do something else.
Right.
But we have to be more conscious of that, because we're always trying to figure it out through somebody else's eyes.
Right.
Use your own.
That's right.
And if you don't have good eyes, ask somebody to help you. And that's the problem. We don't want to ask for help. Ask for help, and say, this is what I need. I utilize my kids a lot. Hey, I need you to keep an eye on him, until I do this. My daughter helped me a lot, and I appreciate it. She became my personal assistant. I said, okay, listen, go take this and go do this. And she would do it for me, So you have to utilize what you have without burdening people. You have to share and say, listen, this is what I need. And that's how I was able to do it.
Yeah, I think for me, the first week we stayed in routine, because you can't take them out of routine, right? Because they need some type of structure until we can figure out what was really going on. So the best thing was to keep them into the routine that they were already in, getting up, going to the table, doing what they need to do, reading 45 minutes until the teachers figured out what they needed to do. They had already had their laptops, because again they were bringing their Chromebooks home every day. So they were able to still check in. They were able to do so the things that they could do. I still continue that routine until we were fed more information from the teachers.
Right.
I think it's being attentive to your child's needs, knowing what's going on in the school. So a lot of people, I believe, if you don't follow your kids or even email the teachers, you're lost when that happens, because it's like, okay, what's going on? But if you know everything that's going on, the teachers would laugh, and my kids used to get they used to say, oh God, your mother, there she goes. Because I was always emailing the teachers, so I kind of knew what was going on. So my daughter would come home and she would joke, because she's like, oh Ma, they be joking about you because you're on the emails. So I kind of knew what was going on. But for the parents or a person who doesn't follow like that, they probably were really extremely lost, or the person that wasn't tech savvy or did not have the computer at home. So we stayed in a routine until the teacher said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then we got into what you said. Okay, how is it going to work for us? Because we no longer had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right. To get
That's
on
right.
That was the plus. That was a plus for me.
Yes, it
was.
was.
I was getting up at 4:30 before them, right? And then I got them up at 5 o'clock. So I was like, oh, we don't got to do this.
We
no
don't
more,
have to.
right? So we started changing the routine, and we started. Okay, I think I like this. And then I actually found out that it worked a little bit better for them, the cyber school. So we got into that routine, and it worked out a little bit more for them. And actually, it turned out to be pretty good.
Yeah.
Good.
And then we did that, for a year and a half. And now we're back at them going back to school. And that has been an adjustment, too.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Well, I saw it through a different lens as the grandma, because like I said, a daughter and my son-in-law, they had their 2 kids and they moved in. Avia was only in preschool, but I mean, they did do an online. She had an online every day. They would take a break at 10:30 for 2 hours and give her something like we had to print out whatever her worksheet was. But I did that. And so I think about those parents like my daughter and son-in-law who were both working from home, right? And like what would have happened then?
Yeah.
you know, and then that was a situation that a lot of parents found themselves in. Yeah, I'm home and I'm working, I'm physically here, but I can't deal with
attend
that
to this
because I got to do this because
Yeah.
this is where the money is.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
I think a lot of parents struggle with that because I think about even my sisters, like they had, one is in, in a hospital, works in a hospital. So imagine COVID environment,
right.
working in a hospital, having to be there, for many different hours overtime, and then having a child that they have to, help as well. I think the biggest thing also I started hearing and started seeing is that, and we talked about this earlier, is that there were a lot of parents that, are just not savvy. Technically,
Yeah.
right? Technology today has picked up much quicker than it has in the past.
Correct.
Some kids are very savvy. We got all the iPhones and
Right.
everything else and the iPads. But, parents were struggling.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some kids were struggling. And some didn't have internet or
That's it.
computers or what have you. What was that like in that type of environment? Because, again, world stopped. We need
Yeah.
to educate still. We are providing tools. We have lesson plans. Teachers have lesson plans that they already probably had already in
Right.
place. But now, how do we get to those students? Because that was a big
Right.
struggle for a lot of people.
You call, you
Yeah.
know, you contact. Is everything okay? You still do what you would do in a classroom for a child that's detached.
Right.
You
Well,
know,
let me- can I ask a question, Trinae?
Yeah.
In East Stroudsburg, did they give out hotspots? Were they able to give out hotspots to families that didn't have internet? I know Blue Ridge also offered some.
I want to say
free-
the Blue Ridge. I can't say for sure if
If they
they
have
did
the
that, but
ability.
I mean, we did once those needs were assessed.
Right.
We did whatever we could, and then there were students that were just paper and pencil because
I
if
will
you
say
don't
Blue Ridge
have,
did offer.
Right.
they did.
Yeah,
Yes, I did
saw
know that.
A notice go through, so I know they did offer.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people.
And I
took
think it was
advantage of
free
but
for a
it
little
was.
bit, and then
Yeah.
you got a reduced amount. But I know there were, kids that were paper and pencil. That if you don't have that accessibility to internet, or sometimes you just don't work well that way.
Right.
So those parents were able to go and get, paper pencil things so that you packets every week, for the week, the work that's there for the week, they would pick that up. So they did whatever they could to make sure you had what you needed, if that's what you wanted.
I have a question
Sure.
too. Because Tree of Life. So when the whole thing blew up, of course, Tree of Life blew up because now everybody's looking for help.
Right.
I reached out to some teacher friends of mine because what I wanted to do, this was before they had announced that they weren't going to do SAT. So I wanted to do an online SAT prep, and I was looking for a math teacher to do like a 5-week workshop. And all the teachers were like, I would love to help you. I can't. I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Because is it true? Like they were actually still teaching the 4 classes a day.
You taught your schedule.
See, that to me, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you taught your schedule. So your schedule that you had, like last year I taught life skills.
Right.
So life skills is for students that are significantly, have significant intellectual disabilities. So my kids did amazing.
Right.
I was so proud of my students. They did amazing, but that's difficult.
Yeah.
But it worked, because like we talked about structure. We took what we did and moved it into a new format.
Right.
So it was a new format, but now we always have math at this time.
Right.
This is what and my students were looking for that consistency.
Right. Right.
They were looking for that, like Mrs. Larry is 9:01, and you didn't get on yet. I'm like, listen, I'm trying to make breakfast, but I'm here, but yeah, but it was for them it needed to happen that way, and I think that for us, I think we needed that as well, just as much, just because it's like it gave you, as much as we talked about
Right.
normal not being normal, people needed a little normal.
Yeah.
They needed a little bit to know, okay, I got homeroom, I got this, I got that, and I know that this is what my day is going to look like.
Right.
Fatigue, yeah. I had a lot of Zoom fatigue. It was a different type of tired.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you are on the computer all day long, and it was different. But it's like we did what we needed to do to offer instruction the way that it needed to be offered for our students. So, yeah.
Because like I said, I shared a little bit about how how it works for me at my school. So we teach once. It's recorded. Those that can work asynchronously can just watch the recording and go on. But the whole rest of my day is I go through my list and I plan for the next day. Okay, oh my God, he's got 3 overdue lessons. Let me put him, and the student gets booked into my Zoom room. So I know at 10 o'clock it's just me and this kid. I can pull up, this is the essay you did last week. Let me show you where you went wrong. Or this, so it really lends to a little more of that independent, that personalization. And I just could not imagine. Even though like I am on the computer all day and I am on Zoom all day, but if I had to do like 30 kids back to back to back online, I don't know that I would have felt as fresh or
Well, you still got your prep. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So high school works a little differently. You know, I had we do block scheduling, so my prep, essentially was from where last year like 2 hours. So you still got that time away. To that you would have like your traditional lunch and your traditional time away from kids. So it gave you that, but it was a lot. It was just different. It was just different, and it was different for everybody. Everybody had a different level of different, and we were able to find our way as much as we could, even in the midst of COVID and the crazy. COVID was crazy. COVID's still happening. COVID's still crazy.
And still it's
So can you explain to me the difference between the charter school and the public school? Because is it more personalized, right?
But not every charter school works that way.
Okay.
My school just happens to work that way.
Right, because for my kids, right, they have personalized teaching, but it was like 4 or 5 kids to that one Zoom versus your personalized, which is just that one kid and you. So there is a little difference there.
It can be that though. It can be that
Okay.
because number one, you have to identify your students that are in need. So you can pull them and say, listen, this group here, I'm going to have you work on this. I'm going to take this group and I'm going to do this. So, hey, I'm going to have you guys log back in at 12:30. I'm going to work with this one. And so that was happening for people, for students, as much as they, who needed what. And especially in that environment where students had so many different needs, teachers had to be more aware of seeing what does it look like when a student's not engaged. Now the thing is that the kids don't like to keep their cameras on, so that was the thing. So depending, like I had a rule, you have to have it, and that honestly, I shouldn't say that was a rule for the district. But then, as teachers, sometimes you make your own decisions as far as what is okay, and then that changes as well. That sometimes we might not know why cameras off. Maybe they need to be off. Maybe they do. So we're not going to turn the student away because their camera's not on, and we're not going to not teach them because their camera's not on. We just going to work it out, and we're going to teach, and we're going to do. So those things had to shift too, social and emotionally, knowing that there's reasons why we don't know what students' house look like. We don't know what is going on. What is that? Who's doing something in the background? Like we don't know. So this is why we had to begin to shift from that place of this is what we're doing to let's be flexible. Let's be a little more empathetic. Let's not be so rigid. Let's understand that there's a lot of things happening that we don't know. And we need to be okay with that. And just do what we need to do as much as possible to make students as comfortable as possible so that we can get this job done.
I can see that turning into a whole nother genre because your camera's off and ACS come to your house because your camera's off. Oh God. Because
but you can't
turn things into
we can't do that. You can't do that. Like you just gotta.
And I would tell my kids it's disrespectful. Your teacher's talking to you. Why is your camera off?
But to your point, there could be situations going on at
there's
home.
A lot.
And you know what people say, even with work, we have Zoom, we do Teams, we do all things, and we say when we're with a client, have your camera on so they can see you, background, whatever. Okay, but 9 times out of 10, outside of that, I don't need people don't need to see and record or whatever my envornment.
If there's a certain amount of people, once I see a certain amount of people in a meeting, my camera will go off. Depending on what it is. Like if I'm in a large, 40, 50 person meeting, and you can't really see me anyway. So I'm gonna unless the person makes that request, because it's like I don't feel the need for that if there's 50, 60, you're in meetings.
who's gonna actually see you?
Right. But I know, like, when I first started with CCA, Ms. Footman, I'm going, come on, everybody put your cameras on. Everybody, don't write in the chat pod. Put your mic on. Well, what I realized was somebody would put their mic on because they want to answer a question, but they got a little sister over here screaming, mama's washing dishes over there.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not as easy as, well, can you go into another room? Like, maybe they only have 2
That's
rooms
right.
in the house.
That's
There's
right.
nowhere else for them
And I
to
love
go.
the chat box.
You know what? I'm too old.
Okay.
I can't read and talk. And
I love it. They engage so much in it.
But
Come on,
they
Rhonda,
do.
get in the
No,
chat box.
but
Get in the chat box.
The kids really, really do. But I do struggle with being able to read those little words. So my kids all, that's the joke of the class.
Yeah.
Miss Whitman's old, so y'all gotta help me. So if you put something in the chat box and I don't respond, you better, do the raise your hand.
So let me
thing or
tell you
something.
this: put somebody in charge of the chat box.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah,
would
this is
do.
our first week.
Yeah,
That's
put
what
somebody-
That's what I ended up doing
Yeah,
last
there
year.
you go. Give somebody a job,
Yep.
put them in charge of the chat box, and
Yep.
let them be the person to man it.
It's interesting because when I and again, depending on what type of work you do, labor or whatever have you. I mean, if you have the ability to work from home, it's much easier to adapt. And in real life, as adults,
Right.
these situations actually are life. Post school.
Yep.
Even in colleges and I remember when I started college. I mean, there was no remote
Right,
learning,
right.
You had to be in the classroom, and then they evolved into remote learning, and it was like, oh my God, I was like, this is brand new. But the anxiety of that.
Well,
which,
there are a lot of adults that struggled. I mean, teachers that I spoke with that struggled with working from home because it does take a certain kind of discipline
Yes, it does.
and a certain setup. And there were some teachers that it took them a minute to kind of even get themselves together to effectively do this.
That's the other piece is because it's not just the students, the
Right.
teachers. Some teachers probably are not as savvy, technology wise.
Right.
Then students are probably more savvy than they are in most cases.
And we assume that everybody, even though we're adults, have good situations at home.
Right.
Right.
That's the
Exactly.
assumption that because you're an adult and you're working and you have a home and children, that your life is good at home.
Right.
There's some people who love work and love going to work, love being in the classroom, and there were a lot of people that struggled with that. I miss my students. I want to come back to work. That was another struggle for some people.
How was that? When you talk about teachers, you're spending the majority of the day with the student, right? You can see, you can understand what they're dealing with. Maybe their family environment. Maybe they confide in the teachers, counselors, things of that nature. How did you guys manage those from a social, mental health perspective when, being home?
Yeah, I had that for me. Like I said, last year was my first year with CCA. So not only was I, just getting used to being online, but that's a very special population.
Right.
I have students that are married. I have students that have children. I have students that they because they can watch the lesson later, they work full time and they support their families.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of different situations that you have to be sensitive to. I mean, my day is not a 9 to 3 day. I mean, there are some students I can only talk to them after 6 p.m.
After
or on Saturday. I had a girl, she had a baby and she was pregnant, and the only time that she would save all her work, and then on Sunday we would just go through Zoom and go through class, because that's when her husband would take the baby and go visit his mom.
Wow.
So how was it with we're talking K through 12. How was it with high school students, like the flexibility you had to flex if you have adult students,
pretty much, right.
So then you have the children, right? So is there more flexibility with with teachers? Were they flexible with maybe I need to be available after because I know you had little sessions during the day, but then after hours.
I can only speak for myself, and I would make myself as available. And I shouldn't say that. I have colleagues that I know do that because they love what they do. So we're not going to just be like, oh, 2:30 quitting time,
Right.
Gotta go. If you knew that there was a student that had a situation why they weren't on, you're going to make yourself available. And that's what education is about. It's not for you to just say, you know what? Yeah, this is the time I get off. Yeah, good luck. God bless. No, you make yourself available. And there were students I had to talk to later, or different things that I had to do. But I know the people that I know love what they do so much that they wanted to make sure this one needs to graduate.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So if we need to make sure that this is done this way, then this is what we're going to do. And that's what I love about the people that I know who love what they do. They're making sure whatever it takes, I'm going to do it. If it's after hours, I'm going to do it.
Right.
If it's a Saturday, if I got to, whatever. People are that consistent and connected to their students that they want to see them survive and thrive. So
yeah.
they're going to do that. And I know people did go above and beyond, especially knowing that people are struggling. Kids lost parents. There's a lot of things that happened during COVID that didn't look like what we were familiar with.
Right.
So we had to make those changes and do what we needed to do. And these are the people who do it anyway.
Right.
So these are the people who are regularly like, yeah, come, I'll get there early, or I'll stay later because I know that this is what you need. I'll make myself available. So I definitely think that definitely took place.
I have a daughter, and she teaches high school science in New Orleans, and but the horror stories, like we would call, how you doing, and she was like, Ma, she says, I have parents that are yelling at me because I'm calling at 6 o'clock to talk to their kid because they didn't show up for the Zoom lesson today, and the parents are like, why are you interrupting my dinner? And she was like, I don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah.
Right.
And she really struggled. She started with Teach for America, so they go into the more impoverished areas anyway. But it was funny because in the first year, all she kept saying was, I don't understand. Kids come to school and they don't want to learn. I said, Gianna, this is not you. You were like in the gifted classes. And, you have to find your way to reach your kids.
Right. Right.
So, but yeah, she really struggled with the parents.
Yeah. And parents struggled with teachers, they struggle with the kids are struggling with teachers,
themselves.
the parents themselves. So this is COVID environment, right? Now we're coming out of this, and there was decisions on whether kids were going back to school, whether there was remote cyber schooling, et cetera, and so on. John, I want to kind of pivot to you. So your thoughts on how things are progressing from a current state environment from a school perspective, because I know you've been involved in the district and things of that nature. So what are your thoughts and perspective?
I think everyone can agree that we'd prefer to have the kids in the schools. I think that for socialization, you're talking about all the issues with parents working, other family members at the home, all these distractions and all that sort of thing. So I think most people probably would prefer to have their children going to school like we're accustomed to doing. What we're finding though is a lot of people, I think we all know about the mask debates and the vaccines and the whatever. People that don't seem to really want to do what it'll take to keep the kids in the schools.
Yeah.
We've already seen football games have to be postponed or canceled or forfeited, and it appears that it's only going to get worse before it gets better. Once again, I know that I'll speak for myself. Earlier this year, I thought we would return to this, what we considered to be a sort of more normal situation, but we see that there are many people in our communities, not just here, but I mean throughout the entire country, perhaps even worse in some parts of the country, that don't want to do the kinds of things that they need to do to keep their kids in school and keep them safe, which I don't understand.
I don't either.
Now, I don't have children. I do have 3 stepdaughters and 9 grandkids and a great-granddaughter now.
Congratulations.
Yes, you do have children.
Right? They don't have to be you,
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Feed
I
them long
wasn't
enough, they'll look
involved.
like you too.
Wasn't involved in their raising or anything like that. I mean, Ray and I got together. We were in our 40s, and they were already all very well along and so forth. But nonetheless, I'm somebody very interested in that realm. My mother was a teacher. My grandfather before her was a teacher and high school principal, and so it's something that I've always had an interest in. I even looked into doing it after I left my previous vocation at the age of 37, but wasn't able to pursue it. And so now, I'm getting very involved. I go to 3 different school district school board meetings and committee meetings and whatever, looking to see, what some of the best practices are and what some of the ideas going around in different districts. But like I say, I think everybody would like to have the kids in school.
Yeah.
I think that's
agree.
the
Socialization.
optimal situation for most kids. I think we've discovered, like you've mentioned, for some kids that's not correct, not the best approach. And what you're doing is a part of that, meeting the needs of those kinds of students that need that kind of environment. That's that equity thing we're talking about.
Absolutely.
which is a whole nother issue. But,
Yes.
we'll
I
get
think it's
into that
important
right now.
though, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
if you're talking about students and the inequality or I mean, it's a challenge.
Oh, definitely.
But so what are you? I know you mentioned about school board meetings, so actually, I'd like if you can elaborate on what are some of the things that you feel are opportunities based on discussions that are had in these board meetings, and how important. Because I feel it's so important and vital for your children,
So important.
for parents to also be involved and
In the school board
engaged.
meetings.
And how they go about doing that to make sure that they understand what's going on from a school perspective.
Absolutely, and I think that some of the efforts that are being done in the area, creating committees, that I mean, what's happened at Stroudsburg, we're disbanding the administrative committee, and now we're doing a board committee, and I don't know how that's going to work out. I don't know how diverse that's going to be. I'm waiting to see. I mean, they said they wanted transparency and accountability and whatever. Guess what? I'm going to be holding them accountable to see.
Transparency is such a word that we use and misuse
So many times. Yeah.
it's so manipulated, because what it is that I want you to tell me what I want you to tell me right now. And something that I've learned is that just because I'm not telling you right now doesn't mean I'm not going to tell you.
Right.
But that just means that
Exactly.
you have to wait because you don't have a right to demand.
But not even just a right. I think sometimes people, they want the information, but like, we're still working on it. We're
Right.
still working on
Exactly.
it.
That was the case with the administrative committee in Stroudsburg. They, Dr. Curry put it together, had faculty, had community members, 3 board members were members of that committee when it was set up. And they're still working. They're working on it. I have the letter right here that the students wrote to the Pocono Record and presented to the school board. I
sad.
read this and I cry.
It's sad.
If you can't feel the pain of those students, it's like, so they responded. They did something. It's a step. Is it enough? Well, we'll have to see. It has to play out, but you have to give them some time. And now basically they're just threw it away. We're going to start all, we're going to reinvent the wheel. And I fear what's going to end up happening because I look at the Stroudsburg School Board, not to pick on them, and I speak only for myself. I want to make clear, and I
Right.
read the disclaimer at the beginning.
Right.
Yes, so it's fine.
We
speak
all
only for
speak for
myself.
ourselves.
And I look at that, I don't see diversity. I don't. How are they going to create something that will be diverse and will actually cause there to be some kind of tangible changes?
Correct.
You know, and I mean, I'm told, I have not been to the high school, though they will be having an open house, and I will be going in a couple of weeks, I believe. They have signs up, hate has no home here. Well, that's lovely, but what does it mean
What does
without
it
some
mean?
kind of action? If the
Right.
administration isn't, I've heard tell, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, that there are faculty and staff in the Strasburg School District that are blatantly racist or homophobic or misogynistic or whatever.
So, John, could you read a little bit of that
I was
letter
just
for
going to
us?
say,
I
we'd
mean,
like to
so that
understand
people can
the
understand
context.
Well,
the
I-
letter that
Right.
was put out. And now we have, I believe, last week they dropped the diversity. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, the school board decided we need a diversity committee that is answerable only to us.
Ridiculous.
And so, you mentioned about transparency. That was the buzzword that they used. Why it needs to be under the auspices of the school board and be all in the public eye, under public scrutiny. And sometimes I like to say that sometimes leaders have to lead.
Yes.
They can't just simply respond to the demands of the most vocal
Vocal.
people in the
Absolutely.
community.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you have
Exactly.
to stand up and say,
Good
"Stop!
old boys
not
This
club,
is
huh?
what we're going to do. Fine. Next election, vote me out. But
Yeah.
guess what? For now,
That's
now?
what we're doing.
Ridiculous.
this is what we're going to do.
Yes.
Period.
And that's why I was saying demand. You can demand all you want, but you have to understand people have to make decisions even beyond that. That you can ask for something, you can demand something because you feel that that's your right to do that. But yet and still, you have to allow people to do their job and do the work. And that is where I feel
And then
like
see
it's
where they
not-
come out.
Right. You see where it
once
goes.
Once they present something in public, once they come to some kind of, I don't want to say conclusions, maybe recommendations or advice or whatever it is that they come up, whatever the committee comes up with. Before anything can happen, the board has to take act. The board is who rules, right? They're in charge, and nothing will change. Nothing will happen without it being brought to them for their
So,
Stamp of approval.
for their stamp of approval, for
so
their
let me
consideration.
ask, how is this board made up? What is this board made up of? Is it, how is it made up? You tell me.
You mean like
The-
political affiliations or?
Yeah, I mean, is it evenly black and the diverse?
Oh,
Oh,
different
no.
Decisions
Oh,
here?
no.
No.
Who's making these
In
decisions?
the Stroudsburg School Board currently, the president is an African American lady.
Mm-hmm.
There is a gentleman who is an immigrant from Turkey. He teaches at ESU.
Mm-hmm.
There is one lady who is Latino,
Mm-hmm.
and then there are 6 white people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what the student body
Doesn't
looks
sound
like.
diverse to me at all.
No,
But
it
these are the
isn't.
people
But it
And
depends on who
unfortunately-
runs for the
Right.
seats.
See, that's the other
Exactly.
thing. That's the other thing.
Yeah,
It-
and
I'm going to plug in right here. My husband's
Sure.
running for East Stroudsburg
Okay.
School Board. Stephen Murray.
Stephen Lurie's running.
Okay.
Sorry, I had to plug that in
But
right there.
that
No,
goes back to,
absolutely.
we need
Absolutely.
more support. We need more of us to get into it, right? And
be
understand what
involved.
is
You know,
going
you-
on.
you
We
had said
also
you had
talked
dropped-
about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We also.
Yeah,
go
you
ahead.
dropped out of going to PTA and things or whatever. One of the things that we've been doing, some of us, a few of us, now, I'm a graduate from Pleasant Valley, so I'm able to go there and I can speak.
Mhm.
They have the rule that alumni may address the board. Other school districts, I don't know that that's the case. Strasburg I can address because I live there. My family's lived in Stroud Township now for almost 40 years off and on. I've lived there for the last 2 years. I still actually have property in Bangor School District where my grandson goes. I could go there too, but that's another mess. It's like enough, enough. I have enough. Dr. DeMary then invited me. I met her just a week ago, yesterday, at Stroud Fest. She came by the booth, and because I had commented about what she had said about what happened in Stroudsburg, she encouraged me to come to the committee meeting this past week and to come to their school board meetings, which I will go as an observer to see, because it seems to me that East Stroudsburg has it a little bit more together.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's from strong leadership and the willing participation of other people in it. And it appears to me that East Stroudsburg's got a more diverse board, doesn't fully reflect. No,
Well, but
No, she's not.
but
no,
at least has an openness.
But I think there have been
Yes.
minorities on the East Stroudsburg board. It's not that it's ever been even,
Mm-hmm.
but going back from when Audrey Hawker was on, so like they have more of a history of minority input, if you will. So I
Which
think
is important. People, I know some people on the other side. They talk about identity politics, so they have it just as much. You've got to be a white Christian male, basically. Anyway, a straight white Christian male.
Yes.
Okay, and
You know
Anyway.
what, John? Before you finish, because what I want to do is also we have a call in, so I
Oh.
want to make sure that people have the opportunity to call in. If I'm sure they have input or things that they want to speak to. So comments, questions, we'll give you guys the floor. 1-888-304-4401. Again, 888-304-4401 if you want to call into the show and provide us your comments, your questions that we can help here with the panel that we have now. John, go ahead. 'Cause
okay, well,
And
we're
you
definitely
should
because
read some of it, yeah.
this is exactly where I wanted to go, because I wanted to make sure that we understand, like, we get the whole COVID environment, we get that there was opportunity, we get that we are now coming out of it, but there are decisions made, there's opportunities that
And
impact our children.
and I
right?
don't think it's coincidental that we see that in the midst of COVID, now we have another reawakening of the problems with race, with misogyny, homophobia, these fears and everything. I don't think it's a coincidence that the things happened at the same time. And I don't want to speak about the former president. That didn't really crop out of nowhere either.
Right.
That's something that's been.
That's been
It's
in
just
certain, yep.
It's we swept it under the rug for about 50 years. I thought it kind of went away, and we elected a black president. Well, and we see that. When I addressed the Stroudsburg School Board meeting before they did what they did, I said, well, I grew up here. I went to Stroudsburg schools, kindergarten through 9th grade. So I went 1 year at Stroudsburg. My family moved to Ross Township, so I ended up graduating from Pleasant Valley. And when I went to elementary school, I went to Hamilton Elementary. It was a bunch of lily white kids. There was one Jewish family. And my best friend through grade school was Jewish. But he was the only one. Everybody else looked the same, sounded the same, believed the same. And parenthetically, at the Pleasant Valley School Board meeting, lady stood up there. So people in East Stroudsburg, take a clap for this. At least I've been told you should. One lady said they moved to the West End to avoid all of this stuff going on where they had to like accept people that were different. Now, she didn't say it directly like that. What she said was, we moved out here to be around people who think like us and believe like us.
Wow.
Parenthetically,
Wow.
look like
Right.
look like
Right.
us.
Wow.
She didn't say that, but okay, and that's the reality. Pleasant Valley is a total disaster.
Is that the same meaning that they voted against the equity policy? 'Cause
Yes,
they-
they got them to table. No, what they got, they ended up having a tie on the board because one person was not present, and it originally was going to be shuffled back to the policy committee for reconsideration. Now, this is something that the Pennsylvania School Board Association had recommended, and that's what they do. I've looked into the PSBA. It's a non-for-profit thing. It advises on areas of policy and curriculum and a whole bunch of different things for school boards, so that it's a resource for school boards where not every school board has to like recreate the wheel. They have this as a reference. And nearly all the school boards, there's 505 school districts in Pennsylvania, nearly all of them belong to this. It's not a governmental thing. It's a totally independent, not-for-profit, whatever, 501c3, whatever. But they use that as for guidance or whatever. And this was something that was proposed, Policy 832, it was a PV. And somehow or other, they managed to get it completely quashed, gone. They don't even want to consider the possibility. At least at Stroudsburg, there's a board committee, so maybe we have some hope. At PV, forget it. It's dead for now. And it's not going to come back anytime soon because likely the board is going to become even further. There are only 2 reasonable people running for 4 seats, and we don't know how well they're going to do. So it's only going to get worse. And they have hereditary board seats out there. There's always a Berger or Kresge. There's
certain names that
certain-
just have
Just
the
that
longevity.
carry.
for the last
Right.
187 years,
Right.
since 1960, since the district was formed.
That's
The
the
same
problem out here.
families.
Yeah.
Well, they did hire their first African-American female principal. So
Oh, did
we will
they?
shout out to them for that.
Oh, okay.
Maybe they thought that was enough equity.
They won't.
I
Well,
don't
they.
Well, can anybody speak to what's going on in Pocono Mountain? Like we talked about Stroudsburg, East Stroudsburg, and
that
Pleasant
I
Valley.
haven't gone to Poke Mountain
Got a
yet,
call.
so.
Hey. Okay.
Hello. Welcome to the Sistahship Network. Your name? Hello. You're on with us. This is the Sistahship.
Hold up.
Oh, they
No.
hung up. Okay. They'll
I-
call
I-
back. That's fine. 888-304-4401. Come on and call back in.
I'm just going to read a few words from
Yes,
this
go ahead and
letter.
read
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
letter. So this is
I
public
had to
records.
print
This
this
is
out.
from the Pocono Records.
It was a
and
letter to the editor to the Pocono Record, February 19th, 2021. And the administrative DEI committee in Stroudsburg was set up. Well, what ended up happening is students then went to the school board in March. They took turns. They each had 3 minutes, so they lined up, as I understand it, and each read a portion till they read the entire thing on the record at the Stroudsburg School Board.
Nice.
And so this was the initial response. I mean, the administration's response was to set up this administrative DEI committee. But I read this, and because of having had a black partner and going, and what I learned a long time ago is don't talk. I used to say, go talk to some black people, go talk to some Latino people. No, go listen to them.
Listen.
Go listen. And as a white man, I know there's nothing that I can say to anybody that they don't. I have nothing to add. I need to go and open my ears and listen
Listen
and
to
learn.
Right.
White
Right.
men always think they know everything. They do. I hate to stereotype, but a lot of white men really do. They
I
think
like
they have all
that.
the answers.
I like
It's
that.
like, wait a
The
minute.
opinions of
Yeah, exactly. That's my
Right,
opinion.
shout out to
Right.
the disclaimer.
shout out to disclaimer.
Yeah, that's my
John,
opinion.
go ahead.
Well, that'll kill any political opportunities I'm having. Okay. The Stroudsburg School District, in particular Stroudsburg High School, has been and continues to be an actively racist space. School should be a space in which every individual feels safe, respected, and valued. This does not happen at Stroudsburg. Students whose intelligence was questioned by teachers, counselors, administration, despite excellent academic performance, because of both explicit and implicit biases in the faculty. Students who were harassed by faculty and staff with racist comments and slurs. An administration that has failed to support and encourage students of color. And they go on, staying silent and maintaining the status quo in this time is a sign of approval of these terrible actions. Many of us regret remaining silent while attending Stroudsburg. Well, praise God they stood up now.
Yes.
No, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
And if you can't, and there's a lot more here, but if you can't read that and feel like, oh my God.
Right.
There's
you
a
know,
problem.
Because when I
Right.
went there were no people of color to speak of. I mean, there were a couple in Stroudsburg, whatever. When I went to PV, there was one black gentleman. I think he was great. He was at least 1 or 2 years older than I was. That was it, you know. And I come back. I was gone for some period. I lived in Houston and Detroit, and I went to Europe and Australia and whatever, and did all these things. And come back. I'm thinking, well, look, there's a lot more diversity in the population,
Right.
whatever. And then you come in. This
That
is
right
like
there is
smack
telling
me
you
upside the
something.
head. You
Yeah.
think, you
Yeah.
would think, but
Yeah.
And so you're reading that, right? We just had an incident last week in the schools where they sent an email out because someone wrote something that was inappropriate in the school.
and what's done about it?
Right. And they said they were looking
Into it.
and looking
Yeah.
into it, and that was it. So you really don't know
No,
what
right.
was done about it, what happened, what was said, or whatever, but it was inappropriate. So we do know that it still exists.
Inappropriate.
Whether or not it was
Inappropriate.
right, whether or not it's 2019 or whatever, we know
Right.
that it exists because the kids do bring it home, and then they do send us emails when it happens. Oh, you know, some kids came in and they did this, and my kids come home and they say this stuff to me. So I know
But even more
that it still
concerning
happens.
to me is the lack of, I mean, and the policy 832 at PV was not, you know, of course they talk about CRT.
Mm-hmm.
It had nothing whatsoever to do with that.
Right.
It didn't even have to do really with instruction or curriculum
Right.
to students. It had to do with staff awareness
Right.
and staff training and, you know,
So speak. I think the biggest thing is we know the climate that we're living in. I
Right.
mean, this is still going on.
Mm-hmm.
We know this
Right.
for a fact. People can brush it under the rug, deny it, whatever they want to do, conspiracies, whatever have you, politics, whatever you want to throw in the mix, right? This is still going on. 2021. Okay? So, and you're seeing, and that, what students came and communicated, if I was an administrator or on the board or anything, it would literally tell me we have a huge, if these students are feeling this way and seeing what's going on, and this is the climate.
But look what happened in Delaware Valley. They had an incident with a school board member making transphobic or agreeing with transphobic posts and whatever. They tried, you know, people, there was a big uproar up there and school board meetings or whatever. And the superintendent writes a letter and assures people, writes this very nice letter. But the thing that stuck out to me was, well, most of the students in the Delaware Valley School District feel safe and comfortable in our school. Well,
Most?
you've implicitly admitted that some
Admitted
don't.
that there's, right,
Some
exactly.
don't.
Exactly.
What are you doing
What
to
are you doing
address
about that?
Right.
Right.
What are you doing? I don't care if it's one student.
Right.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Most of them do. The vast majority
During
do.
COVID, that video came out with the young lady who made that explicit video, and that showed racism. I'm not sure what happened there or if it was swept under the rug. And that was a huge issue, and there was a march from the, I think, Dansbury to the
Oh,
school.
well, yeah, that was
What happened?
what
I
it was.
mean,
A
so
white
we
student
know.
was asking, why can't
Right.
white students use the N word?
Right, right.
But they said, you know, whatever. They didn't understand.
But yeah, we have
You
a
know.
school board that, right.
Basically,
So we
like,
know that history, we know that the history books, I say this all the time, history is only one-sided. From a history
And
book
sometimes
I
perspective,
call
an
it white.
education
It's
perspective.
whitewashed.
It's-
Let's just call
You're
it,
right.
you know, which carries the double meaning that I intended
That you
to mean.
intend to, and
Yes.
it's absolutely, and I think this is the reason why diversity is so
Important.
needed and important in our school systems. Because forget about the adults.
Right.
They're going to believe what they want. They want
Right.
to feel what they want. And unfortunately,
That's what I say. You
that
know,
is an
people that look like me
imposed-
and
Right.
my generation. I'm sort of tail end baby boomer
Right.
generation. Yeah, forget it.
Yeah.
I'm not, forget it. But I was at the West End Fair for 4 nights at the booth out there. And, forgive me, the dusty old white guys that go by and they say stupid stuff, whatever. But what really hit me was there was like an 18, 19, 20-year-old, roughly, I can't tell anymore. They all
Right.
look young to me.
Right.
You could have been 35.
14-year-olds looking 20.
Yeah, I see 10-year-olds driving cars.
Right.
Like, what the, But anyway, a young man, obviously very young, 20-ish,
I think
whatever.
they're having a little trouble hearing you on the mic. You
Oh,
might wanna
I'm
speak
sorry.
into the mic. Yeah. Yep.
Who came up and took one of the political buttons, and threw it on the ground and was like, not angry, enraged.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
like clinically, I'm not I don't play one on TV, but I mean, obviously the young man needs some serious help,
Mental health.
you know. But all the other little buddies in his group,
Egged
whatever, whatever, that's rah, 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 but that's, like Eldred and Polk Townships,
But I think
How do we
too,
fix this, though?
Well, one of the things when I taught, because I started my education career in elementary school, and one thing that stuck out to me, because we all know February comes, it's Black History Month, and we all talk about Martin Luther King and
Right.
Harriet. Well, I started to introduce the Fannie Lou Hamers, and when I taught a literature class for 10th grade. When we got to poetry, I introduced them to the last poets and Gil Scott Heron, and just started infusing some other examples of Black history.
Right.
And I think that's part of it, because everyone knows Martin Luther King, so it's easy for a
Right.
teacher to say it's Black History Month. So we're gonna
Martin
do I
Luther
have a
King.
dream speech? Okay, well guess what? He had many other speeches. Let's talk about a letter from a Birmingham jail. Let's so there's so many things that can be incorporated.
and not just in February.
And not just in February,
February.
right?
Right.
Exactly.
And not just in
It's all
literature.
history.
But also, I
But-
I think I think it gets so much attention because then the racists can say, well, why do we have to talk about only Black? So we have to celebrate everybody's heritage, Asian heritage. We have to have Irish heritage. And I think if we begin to really do that, it doesn't have to be a scary thing for those people who just look at it as something different.
We relegate it to 1 month out of the year
Mm-hmm.
instead of making it truly our whole history.
It's just history. That's all
It's
it is.
history.
It's just history.
Right.
It's
yeah.
infused. It should be infused and incorporated in everything that we do.
Absolutely.
And it cannot just be one time.
Right.
And
Right.
that's
Absolutely.
where I feel like,
But you have-
that gets box checking. Like
Yeah.
right now, that's where you end up, that's what ends up happening. Because just like this, we have the letter and we have, we formed a committee. Box check. No.
No.
There's
That's step
a
one.
revamping.
That's
step one.
There's a
period.
revamping that's necessary.
Yeah.
There's implicit bias training. You have to understand how implicit bias affects everything that you do. But when people don't realize that because they haven't done their own work, because they don't realize they have work to do, because I've just been okay.
That's it.
Right.
I've been okay.
Right.
Going here and going there, and my son has Black friends. What's the problem? Like,
Right.
it's okay.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I have Black friends. Like, it's okay.
Right.
Like, no, there's more to it than that. Like, something Don Lemon said, I was watching, and he said, if you don't have any friends that are different from you, you
Yeah.
are failing.
Yeah.
Right.
You are failing.
Right.
And it's
No.
true. You are failing. Like, you have to have people around you that don't just reflect your
Yes.
own views.
Your own
That
views.
don't just sit there and regurgitate what you say and agree with everything you say. You need to have people in your life that check you and say, hey, that's not right.
Right.
That's
Incorrect.
not okay. That thought process is not all right. We need to fix that. But we don't want that. Nobody wants to be accountable. Nobody wants to work.
Agree.
I think that's where we have to begin because
And-
that's where
and-
we need
and-
to go.
And the thing that
Agree.
I've realized is that this is something that white people have to fix. We created it, not me specifically,
Right.
but
And it's funny because Jane says that spicy. She says that too.
yeah, this is
Yeah.
because this is the system we have set up.
Right.
This is the educational system, the political system. I had an argument with somebody who was trying to tell me that the founding fathers were these godly men. Oh, my God.
But we uphold the
Really?
system. White supremacy culture is upheld by all of us. And we don't realize
Yes.
it because
Right.
it's ingrained in everything
That's
that we
right,
do.
right, right.
So as much as it's something that you say that white people have started, we all are
We all
part of
have
it.
our
And we
part of
all
it.
have our part
and we-
in making
Right.
it happen.
Well, I think that's part of the reason why, and Tiffany and I were talking about this the other day, about the lack of cooperation in the black community.
Yeah.
Because there's an internalized racism
Oh, yeah.
as
Right.
well.
Right.
I mean, I have unaware racism. I'll do and say things, and I love it when somebody will check me privately. Don't call me out like on the public square. But people will say to me, John, that didn't really. Maybe you didn't mean to sound like
Right.
that, or
But that's
whatever.
how it came
Please,
here,
because
right.
otherwise I don't know, because I suffer from unaware racism. But I'm willing to learn.
Right.
But black people, I
That's a
went through a Center for Healing Racism in Houston like 25 years ago. And that was one of the aspects of internalized racism, where black people distrust other black people because you too have been taught, we've all been taught to fear one another.
Right.
And it affects you, and it affects me. It's in different ways, but because I have the power.
And
As a
I-
white man, I have the power.
And it also comes, like, I know for me, growing up, hi Mom, but it was a little weird because my mom, coming from the South, and it was about, you have to be a lady, you have to be polite, and you have to speak, and you need your white gloves. My dad was from Harlem, born and raised in New York City. He was like, come on, there's a rally down the street, let's go.
Culture is different, right? So north, south.
So when I said to Mom, I want an afro, she's like, no.
Well, and going back to education and students, and it's sad to even hear, but the reality is what it is. And I'm glad that they spoke up. But then the question is, how do we fix this?
Yeah.
Because I think we're always focused on, and not intentional, we're always focused on the problem,
Right.
but what are the solutions that can be put in place to help? And I think one of the big solutions is parents have to speak up, and they have to feel like they have a voice.
The community.
The community needs to speak
Yeah,
up.
because I'm not a parent, but I'm speaking
Right,
up.
right.
It's
I'm
right.
speaking up.
You
Right.
have to.
When me and John, we went to lunch the other day and we talked about it, right? And I said, don't tell me to go outside and change when we can't change internally
Right.
within
Yeah.
in our own community, right?
But we can
Because
join.
what I see up here in the Poconos, just in the Pocono areas, and that's just, it's all over.
Yeah.
But I'm here,
Right,
so I'm
you're here.
addressing what
What's
I
here.
see
Right.
here in the Poconos, right? So it's very small community, but within us internally, we fight, right? Because blacks don't trust blacks, and that happens all over. And then we don't trust each other, and this clique goes here and this clique goes here. Oh, I'm not going to her thing. Oh, I don't like her,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't support what she's doing, so I'm going here. So what happens is, and we talked about it, right? When we have something that we have to get down and dirty on. See, we don't do what Martin Luther King did.
Right.
We don't do what Malcolm X did, right? We don't come together because we don't like her, okay? So we separate out, and we don't come, and nobody leaves because everybody want to be the HNIC.
Right.
Nobody wants to
be-
follow.
yeah.
We have forgotten how to follow each other, right? So we are trying to fight a battle that we're going to always lose because we as
Have to
black
come
people
together.
don't know how to come together
But I
anymore.
think,
Well, let me speak to that a little bit. And I want to say that only because there's something I'm trying to do with elevating the voices of the people. As you know, I love the Lord, and I will say that openly. Shout out to my church, Reclaim for Christ Ministries. However, I want to unify through the faith.
Stronger together.
Yes, through our faith organizations in ways of organizing to understand what's going on. Be aware of what's going on. You're
Absolutely.
sleeping, and there are things happening underneath your nose that you're not aware of. And I realize that through our organizations that we can come together and do something great. If we say we love God, if we say we love our children, then at the end of the day, we all should be doing something to move whatever we're talking about to the next place.
Right.
So for me, I think the understanding is that yes, I do agree with that to a certain extent, but I also believe that there are people who are like, you know what, time out for all that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
and I'm one of them. I'm one of those people because
And
I don't
you-
do problems.
Right.
I don't
Right.
do confusion.
And you have to follow the people that are not
Yeah.
confused
Right.
and who
Right.
will follow that, because there are those who won't, right?
Well, I mean,
So
but
the-
meanwhile, work together with the people that you can work
Right.
together
Correct.
on the issues that you can work together
You
with
find
them
your people
on.
who are working.
That's
And
change
maybe,
management
you know,
right
I
there.
agree with Mary Jo about this and that, but I don't like about this or
Right.
cousin Romeo or whatever. But meanwhile, if there are things that we can work together on,
just do it.
then we need to do that and lay aside some of that
Correct.
other stuff.
And that,
you know?
I think it goes back to what you were saying, Tiffany, and back to what you were saying is that, I know change management 101. You have to, you're going to have people in the green, you're going to have people in the red, right? And somewhere in between. You have to focus on the people that are already there or almost there.
Yep.
Those are going to be your leaders to help bring everybody else over. Not everybody, but a good
Who wants to
majority
come.
over. Who wants to come? And that's what it's going to take. It's taking and focusing not on the people who are just not ready, because you're never going to change
Right.
them.
You're not going to change
You're
them.
forced. That's a forced change that you're never going to win that battle. You have to focus on the people who are willing to change
Right.
or are ready there.
Yes.
Right.
They're green. They're ready to go.
Right.
Those are the people that we have to focus our energy on, because we can't be focusing on the drama,
Right.
right? We got to focus on the product of the environment that is willing to move forward
Yes.
and evolve. Because we're not there yet, because we're focused so much on the
Right.
people who are not willing to see change.
Something I've learned from someone that I know, a professor of mine. You help people out, or you help people out. You move them out.
Right.
Because when you have work
I like
happening, you have work happening, and you have things happening. There's going to be people who don't want to do it.
Right.
But you want to help them out to go be somewhere where they are happy, because in this organization, this is what's going on, and that's why you get a top-down approach.
Right.
From when your top is agreeing to something and saying this is what we want, then everybody has to follow. If you don't like it, then you have to go find someplace else to go where you are going to be happy. So I think that's what people have to realize, that you have to have leadership that is willing to speak to what we're doing. It cannot be wishy-washy. It can't be today we're
Today
doing
this,
it, tomorrow we're not.
not.
No, it can't be that way. So when you have good leadership that's like, listen, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to, this is what's happening here. There are districts right now who are 100% invested in this is the work that we're doing in diversity. We are doing this. This is a part of evaluation processes. There's districts that are doing that because they believe in that work, in the sense of this is not, we don't deal with that. Hate doesn't live here, but we're going to show you hate doesn't live here, because on your evaluation, it's going to say, what have you done towards looking into diverse issues? What have you done to improve yourself?
Right.
You know, so there are people who are doing that. It's just that,
Accountability.
like, for example, Philadelphia, to graduate, they have a requirement that you have to take a class related into like diversity. You have to do it. You know, everybody's not there. You know, look at the population of Philly. But people think that, you know, Philly's just concentrated. There, you know, it's where there's a lot of people of color, but it's really not that way. It's just concentrated in a certain way. So there are people doing it.
But I think also we have to understand everybody can't do the same thing.
No.
And that's where we
In
have
the
a
same
problem.
way.
And
Because
that's
everybody's
where
like,
we have the problem.
right, because but I'm doing this.
Yep.
You need to be doing
And
it.
no
Well, no,
one
I'm
else
gonna
would
I'm
Yep.
gonna go around on this
Yeah,
way.
it is.
Like for me,
Test
I
your
know
climate.
I'm always so busy, so I don't do a lot of socialization. But one of the things that I try to be really responsible with, because and that's why I love teaching high school. I can speak to them in a different way. So even with, like, right now I'm teaching one of the most boring courses in high school, which is British literature. But I'm not very excited till we get to Frankenstein. But I always try to we're going into Beowulf, and we're talking about, well, what makes a hero, right? So now we're changing the dynamic and definition of what a hero is, but I always try to let the kids know, I speak from your heart. I want them to have open hearts and open minds. I share as much of my story and my road with them, as I can, so that they understand, just because I'm a black woman and I was raised in New York, listen, I got 3 college degrees and I've done this, and it didn't come easy, and I did raise my kids, and my husband was in the home, and just to give them a different perspective of what life can be, because then that changes their perception as they go out into the world.
Right.
It's true.
Your truth, your history, your and students need to trust as well, right? I mean, the more you give of yourself, the more you show, that vulnerability and show they're immediately kind of drawn to that.
You have to show
I mean,
you're
sometimes
human.
it goes too
Right.
far.
You're
Like,
human.
but
Exactly.
they want to share more than I really want to know. But I'm there for them.
And that seems to me to be the at the crux of the problem in some of the schools, is that students don't feel like there's someone that they can go to
Yes.
and
That's
trust
the sad.
and have their concerns and whatever's addressed.
Right.
And because that's what I see in this
Yes.
letter.
Yes.
That's what I hear.
No connection.
That's,
Right.
that there really isn't anybody
Who's
that they
looking
know-
out for them? Right.
Yeah.
who
Right.
has their interests at heart and will sit down and listen to them and then do something about what
One
they're
thing
being
I taught in the Allentown School District for 4 years, and serious school, school of trauma children, and one thing I learned there was that aspect of trust. I don't have to necessarily come from where you come from.
Right.
I don't live that life, but I understand that you're hurting
Amen.
right now.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And I'm
Yes.
going to do what I can to help you. I mean, I had a 5-year-old who was so traumatized and violent. Somebody took a red crayon. He stood on the desk and peed on the kid.
Whoa.
I had another kid. I couldn't give him a sharpened pencil because he wanted to stab people in the neck.
Wow.
But this is what these kids are seeing,
Right.
and this is the environment. So now, how do you?
How
So
do
you
you-
have
yeah.
to be creative in the classroom.
Right.
Right. Kids have all sorts of trauma.
Sure.
So I had a little boy. He had this during math because he was embarrassed that he didn't get math. So to keep him from running out of the room, I had to clear under my desk and just let him sit under my desk while I taught math, and that was the only way he would stay in the room during math. So I mean.
It goes back to this trust thing, and I think again to your point with that letter, if students don't feel that they have a voice, they can speak, but if they're not heard,
Yeah.
and people are not doing anything about it, they lose trust, all trust in the system, all trust in their educators, all
and
trust
what happens to their interest in education? And
Exactly.
Exactly.
Now-
They lose the motivation.
Exactly.
They lose these are the kids that some will end up dropping out, or they
Yeah.
end
Right.
up going on to college, and they
Right.
don't reach their fulfilled. They don't
Right.
reach their
The potentials.
their potential. Thank you.
So do you
You know,
feel that if
and
there
that's-
was more diversity in the school or diversity training, that they would trust more? And I know you're head of diversity. What are some of the things that you're doing or that can be done to help these kids that feel that way?
Well, there has to be an acknowledgement that there's a problem. You
Yeah.
know, it starts there,
Like
and there
12
has to
step.
be. Yeah, it has to. We have to acknowledge that. Do we need this?
Right.
Why do we need this? It is very important for students to see people that look like them. Representation matters. I
Yes.
say it all the time. And it does matter. And it helped me in my own life because even though I didn't necessarily end up on the path that I thought I would, at the time I would, but seeing that my parents were college educated, okay, my pediatrician was a black woman, my kindergarten teacher was a black woman. All of those things were things that I saw. My father's best friend was the obstetrician that delivered me. And he was the first black man in Englewood, New Jersey to have a practice. Like, these are the things that were taught to me. Now, even with that, I didn't necessarily end up on the right path. I ended up teaching in my early 30s. You know, I did other things before I got there. But that still was a foundation for me because if I didn't see it, then I wouldn't believe that it could happen. And that's what kids don't realize. Like, kids don't, like, we talk about teaching with trying to bring more educators into teaching. And right now, nobody wants to teach. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
Teaching is just not a profession nobody wants to do right now. But even still, kids need to be able to see, I can do this because I see somebody who's either reinforcing that I can be something, or I see somebody that looks like me doing it. And as far, like, the diversity training that I've done for staff really helps them acknowledge a lot of their, number one, implicit bias, acknowledging that color blindness is not okay. It's not okay.
Right.
You
No.
cannot keep saying that we don't see color. Then that means you do not see me. I am
Right.
not
That's
invisible.
Exactly. People
I
don't,
am
a lot of
not
white people don't
see-through.
understand
They
that.
don't,
They
and
think they've
that's-
arrived when they say I don't see color.
Right, and I explained to people that yes, I know in the 80s the multiculturalism and all that was we don't see color, we love everybody. But guess what? My blackness is who I am.
Right.
And me teaching my daughter about the beauty of who she is, and you're saying you don't see that, you are now moving, you know, what I've said away from her. And now we're dismantling what I've taught her about beauty. And I try to explain that to people that you don't understand. Saying that is wrong because it's a part of me. People of color are used to being classified by color. Black people are used to being called black.
Right.
That's just what it is.
Right.
Other people are not.
Right.
So when people go through that, they're like, you know, I don't understand that. We're used to that, so it's not a bad word for you to call me black. I
Right.
realize I'm black.
Right.
I walk around with my blackness all day long, knowing who I am,
Right.
and cannot separate from it.
Right.
You know, and so by you saying you don't see it, is there a problem with it? That's what you have to begin
Yeah.
to dig deep and see. And that's what, you know, it's hard for people who teach. And I say that only because people, well-intentioned professions are doctors, teachers, any medical people go into that profession because they love what they do.
Right.
They love helping. They are helpers. That, like Mr. Rogers said, you look for the helpers, right? Those are the people who are doing this work as far as being educators. It's hard for them to see that there's something that might be inside of them that is not conducive for someone
For
else's
someone else.
growth or someone else's growing, you know, and it's something that we have a hard time dealing with. So I try to deal with people from a place of easing them in. I don't come out the gate saying you're all a racist,
Yeah.
you know,
Right,
this,
right.
you know, you
Right.
can't keep doing what you like. No. We don't go into it from that place. We go into
Right.
that place where like, let's talk about how students see certain things. So I show a different, like a video, and you know, about students' perspective and things of that. And then we talk about, you know, we talk about microaggressions.
Right.
Let's talk about them. The fact that you saying that you are so well spoken
Right.
is not
I get that all the time. Where are you from?
No.
Oh, you're from a.
Where are you
Where?
from?
I
It's
didn't
not
think you were American.
appropriate. These are things that
Yeah.
are not
Thank you.
okay, people.
Right.
We have to come. We got to do better, but we
Right.
don't know better. When we don't know better, we can't do
We
better.
can't do
But once
better.
we know, we can. So I go through a series of different things with teachers to help them see certain things. Take the implicit bias test. Do it for yourself. You don't have to do it.
Right.
Don't do it for me. Do it for you. So you can see what you really think about certain things.
Right.
And I have people that come back to me and say, Trinae, ever since I did this training, I see things so differently now. I'm so aware now. I tell people I'm the awareness police. I just want you to be aware. I just want you to now have an understanding of some things that you didn't realize you were doing unintentionally. I tell people every day, whenever I do it, you are not a bad person. You are not. You are someone who doesn't have information. Now that you have information, what are you going to
What
do
are
with
you
it?
gonna do with it?
Read a book. Listen to a podcast. Don't just do it to do it. Do it with the intent to be better.
Correct.
Do it with the intent to change someone's life. Do it with the intent to realize that, you know what? I wasn't doing this right before. Now I'm doing something to improve myself so I can be the best educator I can be. I can be the best principal. I can be the best para. I can be the best bus driver. Whatever you're doing, do it right.
Right.
You know, and be right about what you're doing. Be intentional about what you're doing to make someone's life better.
Can I get an amen on that? I'm just
Amen.
saying.
Yeah, no, really.
Come on, it's Sunday.
He's
Come on.
She's preaching today.
But that first step of realizing, oh, I do need help. Or,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and your approach sounds wonderful. I'm glad to have connected with you today. I mean, where you because if you're perfectly right, if you slap somebody upside the head with a 2x4,
They're immediately
Then-
going to pull back.
that's
Just-
it.
just
Yeah,
like
they
you
dig their
lost
heels
students,
in.
you
Yeah.
can't.
Just like with students, adults will not learn from someone they don't
will
like.
turn.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
you
It's
become.
true.
But you know, one thing that I feel that I did fairly well with my children, like you said, we taught them to be very comfortable. And I remember when I came up here, we were known as the black family with the dreads because we all had dreads,
And it was
right. Right.
two,
Two.
right? Okay.
So, you know, so you see 5 people walking on the street with dreadlocks, you kind of, oh, I know them. But it also,
Rodney's so crazy.
but we also taught our children to be appropriately curious about other people,
Right.
So you know, it's not only about you have to understand me, I have to understand you too. And I think that's an important part that we sometimes miss because, you know, yes, we are the race, if you will, that has been so downtrodden, but we forget that we have learning that we need to do too about accepting
Yes,
Right.
the other side.
Yes, we do.
You know,
You
so
can't just
it
play
has
victim.
to be a little more comprehensive.
I agree.
Right.
I think.
You know, great discussion. Honestly, I mean, this right here I think is an eye opener for a lot of people. That, you know, either just ignore, step back, don't want to deal with it, but there's so much opportunity, and we already know just based on what was stated by some of the students coming to this board meeting, and there needs to be more diversity,
And they're going to be back again.
and they're going to be back
They're
against.
going to be back again. One of the young ladies, she's a junior at Strasburg High School, and getting some of these people again.
We
And
need
they're
to get
going,
her. We have a.
Yeah.
We said
We need
Yeah.
we need her on our show.
yeah, and is going to do this
Time to
again.
mobilize.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
No, exactly. It's time to mobilize.
Mhm.
Just quickly again, 888-304-4401 because I know people have things to say, so please call in.
Right.
I want to kind of pivot a little because, you know, as times have changed and as we evolve from an education school, public school system, charter school system, we talk about choice, right? Choices that are available. So the change with now these charter schools, what do you see as the biggest either opportunity, or is it a good opportunity, bad like, what are your thoughts about charter between public and public school?
I started my teaching career at Pocono Mountain Charter School. That was my very first teaching job out of ESU. They closed the year after I was there. The problem, I think, from where I sit, and how I see it, I think there does need to be choice, because charter schools can be smaller schools that are specialized, that cater to a specific, whether it's the theater and the arts, whatever,
Right.
sciences. But the problem is the way the system is set up, it pits the charter schools against the public schools,
schools.
so that cooperation can't be there. Because if we can find a way to have a system where we can have like some smaller specialized charter schools that are in cooperation and working with the public schools, we're going to change the whole face of education up here.
That's a great way to look at it, because I think that's the opportunity, again, going back on working together
Right.
instead of against each
Each other,
other.
right.
Because at the end of the day, it is about the students, it is about the kids,
Right.
it's about them growing up
Agree.
and being the best they can in life. What are your thoughts?
I know nothing
About
about charter
children.
schools
Right.
in that sense. I mean, honestly, I'll be honest. It was just a job that people a lot of times didn't want to take, just because of the fact that public school, you have protection. You have tenure and different things of that nature.
Make a
Right.
little more money.
Yes, you make more money. So as far as the charter school as an option to work, a lot of people didn't take that option because they knew you're not necessarily protected. You know,
Right.
3 years after teaching, you get tenure. You
Right.
know, after you get tenure, there's a lot, that, there's a process that you have to go through before they can say, you got to find a new place to be. So it's, as far as what takes place, I believe school choice is important. I've always believed that. It might not be the place for your child.
Right.
You need to be able to have a place to look to that says, you know what, this works better for my family. This works better for my child's needs. Public school might not be meeting your child's needs. So the availability to have another option that doesn't cost you, I think is something that is worth, investing in.
Investing in.
So I feel like it's something that we should have. I think that there always should be an option. Everything doesn't fit everybody.
Yeah.
And so that's why we have those options, and I think that it works.
But I think the school boards have made it very clear that they don't support it. Because I know I got into education, and that was one of my focuses, that I wanted to have a charter school. And I even marketed. I went to Northampton. This was before I was an adjunct there. I went to ESU, and I just was shopping around the idea of like ESU prep, where we would have a charter school connected to ESU. That
a good
and
idea,
nobody wanted to talk to me though.
Wow.
The school boards you're talking.
No, the school,
no-
the colleges.
the colleges.
Because they're not going. They don't want to have that fight with the school boards. They don't want to get into it. I mean, and I did like this whole
That's what I was
position
gonna say.
paper.
We need
Because
money.
of the money.
Yeah,
we need
the
money.
money, right? 'Cause But the thing is, though, and I mean, if it's only about the students, right?
Why not?
Then because you know that you're not serving everybody,
Right.
let somebody do it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
but that's not the reality. So yeah.
I feel sometimes, I think about education, and, when I grew up, and, everybody's like, oh, I want to be a teacher, I want to be this. That was the biggest thing, right? I want to be a teacher. Your parents want you to be a lawyer or a doctor, whatever the case may be. Today, the industry has changed drastically. And again, I only have 11 nieces and nephews, no children of my own, but I feel like when I think about education today and how to prepare children for the future,
Yes.
you need to have some specialized,
Oh my goodness.
because we had electives, right? You have your arithmetic and your
Right.
English and what have you. I don't know if anything's changed today with high school and charter schools, but I agree from a charter school perspective. I think it's very personalized in the sense that it gives students an opportunity to kind of almost work closer to a potential field that they might want, more life experience.
Right. Well, the thing is, though, and I always tell my kids, don't go home and tell your mom I said this. I said, but there is no adult in the lives of most of these high school students, right, that can give them any real direction in terms of a career, because the technologies and
Right.
the fields that are going to be open to them haven't even been created yet.
yet.
So while we're sitting here still doing the same way of teaching them, we need to be making them more generalist.
Yeah.
It's not
The
about
life skills.
right, the life skills. The kids, and one of the things
And push trades, please.
right, hello.
Yes.
But one of the things that makes me crazy, and I honestly, I think we need to stop telling children, I just want you to be happy. No, because you know what happens? Now nobody can cope. 'Cause
Happiness doesn't pay bills.
as soon as they don't get something they like, they want to have
They
a
want to
fight.
fight.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not,
I
you know,
quit.
you- right?
I don't
And
wanna do
I
that.
never said, you know, and it's funny, and it changed in parenting. I think like
Yeah.
when I was growing up, you know, if you said to my mom, "What do you want?" They wanted us to make money. They wanted us to be able to sustain ourselves.
Right.
So by teaching us that focus,
Right.
we learned to pivot when we needed to pivot. We learned to take rejection. We learned those life lessons that more so guaranteed our success or longevity, right? The kids now, as soon as they're not happy, they want to walk away.
Right.
They
They have
can't
no
handle it.
coping mechanisms.
No, they can't handle it.
No.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
That's
I don't-
that's
That's the
where I,
participation trophy world.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Sometimes you
Everybody
lose.
gets
It's
right.
okay. Sometimes
You
you
can't
lose.
win all the time. You can't. It doesn't work that way.
I
so
tell my
there's some history, some things that we can take from, earlier years of education to now we have to incorporate things that are more progressive.
Yes.
In life, and to your point, life lessons, life experiences. And to your, I mean, life is hard.
Yes,
Hello.
And to your point, kids can't, you can't just give them everything because they're going to sit there and think that everything is just owed to them, which we do see that today,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
We've changed the way we kind of, the kids need to grow and they need to understand there's responsibilities. And you're not always going to be happy in your job, or your career. You chose this career path, but no, if Monday through Friday you're not happy, but next week you might be.
Right.
Like you have to just
Stick with
understand how do you cope with it and stick with it.
But right, and also, like with my kids, it wasn't about you always have to be happy. But if you are in a situation that is really just going against the grain of your nature and who you are, it's okay to make that change.
Right, absolutely.
But you have to, but we want to do it for them, right?
Yeah.
I'll call the lady tomorrow and ask her if she can see. No, let them figure
my
it out.
Lord.
No.
Oh, we got a caller coming in.
Wow.
Hello, this is the Sistahship. Who do we have on?
Hello, it's Jane.
Hey, Jane, Miss Spicy. How you doing, Jane?
Oh,
What do you have for us, Jane? You're
good. How are
on
you guys?
live with us.
good show. I love the dynamics. Love it.
Awesome. What do you have? A question, comment?
I do have a question. First, I want to thank all the panel. A very ongoing fight to keep our kids straight, to keep them safe, and accolades to the teachers. Fantastic job they've done in a very hard situation that we're all in. But my question is this. I noticed the East Stroudsburg School District does not follow a dress code any longer. Can the teachers who have taught, can you tell me, have you seen a different dynamic in the kids from when they had to be in uniform versus not? And how do you think that affects their learning? Do you think it affects the possibility of learning less or more if they're forced to wear a uniform?
Good question.
Yeah, I don't.
Thank you, Jane.
Can't really say I've paid
Yep.
attention to that because I work. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I taught life skills, and so my students are extremely compliant.
Right.
They're extremely compliant. They want to follow the rules. That was what I taught last year. They want to follow the rules, and they want to make sure they're doing the right things. I honestly, for me, I believe that you have to learn how to follow rules. That's just a part of life. Then it turns into the expression of my baby can't express himself.
Right.
We got another caller. Hello.
This Wu-Tang T-shirt.
We got another caller. Hello. This is the Sistahship. Who do we have?
Hey, this is Darren. I have a question. I'm sorry if I didn't catch a lot of the show, but I did have a question with respect to critical race theory, because I think that that's getting a lot of traction in curriculums, and just wanted to know the panel's thoughts around that subject, because it's causing a lot of concern. Some may think unwanted, or it's merited. What is the opinion of the panel?
Critical race theory is not being taught. Critical race theory is a post-secondary theory and it's not something that is utilized in any curriculum in any Pennsylvania standards or anything. So what this is smoke and mirrors. It's people who don't want to even think about diversity in any way. Critical race theory, honestly, my opinion, is not wrong. It's not wrong, but it's also something we're not doing. And there's a lot more to it. It's very involved. And if people really took the time to really delve into it, they really would see that it's a very layered concept. You know, there's a lot to it, but it's not something that's being taught in any level. And that's the whole thing that people don't realize. They're just bringing it into one.
You know, there's a lot to it, but it's...
We're hearing, hello, this is Sistahship. Oh, we're getting calls
Hi.
upon calls upon calls. Who do we have on the line?
This is Mama C calling, and I know we're close to the end of the
So
day.
we're gonna go back to what
and
you're asking, but
Yeah,
we
we're
gotta
gonna
try
go
to
back.
get all of the callers in, and then we can kind of
Go back to the
Go back to the
to
question.
everything.
Okay.
But as they call in, we gotta
Okay.
answer it and keep it moving, and then we'll kind of go back to everybody's
Okay.
question.
Okay.
All right, Mama C.
Okay. What I just want to make one quick comment. I think that until we all learn how to follow, all these folks out here who want to be leaders, you can never be a good leader until you learn how to be a good follower. End of story. Goodbye. Continue on.
Thank you, Mama C.
You're right. You're right. Yeah. Too many generals and not enough.
So
but
we'll
getting
have
back to the critical race theory, just
Right.
to piggyback on what Trinae was saying. Interestingly enough, because I'm working on my PhD at ESU, and in yesterday's class, we actually talked about it. So she just introduced it, and then we have a paper to write. But I mean, so it's interesting that it is, right. It's not being taught at the lower levels, but if they're like indoctrinating and getting the teachers and the educators and the superintendents in on it, maybe this is one of the ways, the path to the change.
So people, that it's a misconception, it's misunderstood. It's something that people are saying is being used, like DEI is being used as a buffer, or or shadowing it, and it's not what's happening. And that's the problem, that it's misunderstanding. And so it's something that people have this heightened, obsession, I want to say a little bit with, and it's not necessarily what's happening, because that's not what we're doing at our level, and I don't think anybody else
It's a
is doing it
deliberate effort to mislead
Right.
and to misinform people, because what's happening is, we're trying to address issues of diversity, equity, inclusiveness, or as the PASB says, belonging.
Yeah.
And
And John's got his last thoughts.
CRT is not that at all. It's a reference system where race is used as in examining history and cultural development and so forth, which is a totally different thing than what we're talking about here. DEI is a totally different thing from CRT.
I have to say thank you so much from the Sistahship Network.
you.
Amazing
Yes, thank you.
dialogue. I hope the listeners take heed. It's important to get involved. It's important to have good leadership, diverse leadership in place, and it's important for parents and students to have a voice.
Yes.
With
And
that
to be
said,
involved.
and
Get
to be
involved.
involved,
Get
be
involved.
involved.
Yeah.
Come to the board meetings,
Yes.
get involved.
Show up.
Show up. With that said, thank you all for joining us today. Just quickly, we want to thank our sponsor, We Share Corp. Please locate them. They're in East Stroudsburg. They have a lot of services available. Please make sure you reach out to them. Again, We Share Corp as the Sistahship sponsorship.
And we have a vending event on the 23rd.
And we have a vending
October
event
23rd.
October 23rd at We Share Corp. Any vendors, please reach out to Steph.Fire at thesistahship.com or Tiffany Co. at thesistahship.com. I had to figure out which one it was. But thank you, Trinae, Rhonda, oh my God, John, amazing. You guys were amazing, and we hope to have you guys back, because there's plenty more we can talk about.
Lots to talk about.
Yes, lots to talk about. We talk about this, we talk about that, we talk about a lot. So with that said, thank you for joining the Sistahship every Sunday right here on Genesis Radio, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Talk to y'all soon. Peace.
Peace.
We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya.
Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about
Come on,
it.
John, shimmy your shoulders.
Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on,